There's nothing more addictive than a good roguelike, especially when it's completely offline and you're playing it on your phone. We're only covering the best ones on the Playstore, and I'm sure you'll be surprised by the number of games here and how different their gameplay is, so leave a like and let's get started. Without a doubt, one of the most famous games on this list, and it's a shame it's not on the Play Store, but I couldn't leave it out. And let's talk about The Binding of Isaac, Alain. This is an extremely famous game, and a lot of people wanted it on the Play Store, so an unofficial port ended up appearing. And honestly, I don't even know why it's so popular. I played it and noticed it's maybe a pretty standard roguelike, but after doing a bit of research, I found out it has hidden characters, a really good story, and several different characters that completely change the gameplay, even though personally the game didn't really hook me. Still, it's worth recommending as a very good game that a lot of people don't even know exists on Android. There's one feature that turns this game into a roguelike, but a lot of people don't even realize it. Let's talk about the Sword of Ditto. The idea is simple. Every 100 years the villain Mormo returns and the Sword of Ditto chooses a new hero to defeat him. That's where your character comes in along with the game's roguelike system. Your goal is to grow stronger and become the hero who can defeat Mormo. You can take as much time as you want to prepare, but if you lose, the world resets and a new hero is chosen to continue the journey. The game keeps going like this until you finally defeat Mormo. That's why it's a roguelike, not only in its gameplay but also in the way its story is told. One of the simplest games on this list is also one of the most addictive. Let's talk about Underguild Defense. In most roguelikes, you keep upgrading your character to see how far you can make it. This game works a little differently. As you progress, you recruit new characters instead. The goal is still to survive, but you can build a whole team that fights alongside you like bodyguards. You can also upgrade and merge these characters. Even though they're controlled by AI, you still need to keep moving your own character to avoid getting caught and dying. This simple but different gameplay makes the game feel unique, and that's exactly why it's worth playing. One of the most unique games on this list is actually a story-driven game, but it's also an incredibly addictive roguelike. It's called Warm Snow. The story follows one of the last warriors as a mysterious snowfall turns the people into monsters. Your mission is to investigate what's happening and uncover the truth behind it. As you can see, the game has a beginning, middle, and end like a traditional story-driven game. But every time you encounter enemies, the combat switches to a roguelike style that's really fun to play. You don't gain many permanent upgrades throughout the story, but you will unlock plenty of upgrades during each battle. It's definitely one of the most unique games on this list and well worth trying. A roguelike that's also a card game and almost nobody on the Play Store knows about it. Let's talk about YOHANE the PARHELION. This game is actually based on an anime that's pretty popular, although I've never watched it. The story follows the main character as she enters a mirror world where everything is reversed and she has to find a way to escape, but in this world her closest friends have become her enemies. The game features the classic roguelike path system that you're probably familiar with, and at the end of each run you'll face one of your friends. The game is built around the roguelike formula where every stage gives you different choices, making each playthrough feel unique and incredibly addictive. A 2D roguelike that also works like a hack and slash, and I'm honestly surprised how unknown this game is. Let's talk about PLATYGUARD. In this game, you're in a post-apocalyptic world where you need to survive with your character and eliminate the robots that are in control. The game may look like something big, but in reality the story is pretty simple, while the gameplay is what really hooks you. And basically everything is about upgrading your character and seeing how far you can go. It focuses a lot on fast-paced combat, which really sets it apart from the other games on this list, and that alone makes it worth playing. Relic Hunter is one of those roguelikes that disguises itself as a full complete game, and we're going to talk about it here. In this game, you play as warriors trying to save the world. There are multiple characters, but in reality they don't change the gameplay that much. The main focus is to survive up to 10 waves and reach the final boss, but the whole system still works like a roguelike. Just by looking at it, you can tell it's a solid roguelike. And one funny thing is that even though it's offline, it somehow still gives a co-op feeling while you play. Maybe the most different game on this list, and one that's a bit hard to explain, is Shogun Showdown. This is a very classic roguelike. It doesn't have a story mode, it's just about playing and seeing how far you can go. You control your character and need to move left and right in a strategic way, using the cards you collect along the way. Each correct move lets you defeat an enemy, but a wrong move costs you a life. It's a bit hard to explain, but once you understand it, it becomes one of the most addictive games of all. Maybe one of the most underrated roguelikes on the Play Store, and not just there, but in the entire roguelike universe, is Skull, the Hero Slayer. The game also has a story, and a really good one, where you play as a small skeleton, the weakest of them all. After a human invasion, you're the last one left, and now you need to rescue your fellow demon companions. What makes it really interesting is that since you're the weakest skeleton, you can adapt. It has a story mode, but the combat still works like a roguelike, where you can swap your character's head and gain completely different abilities. It's a really good game, and I recommend it even if you don't usually like roguelikes. Now, if you're looking for a really simple roguelike where you just fight enemies and try to evolve as much as possible, you're talking about Slime 3K. The game even has a cool story. You play as a slime that was being used in an experiment, but you end up breaking free. Now, filled with rage, you go out to kill as many people as you can. So the game flips the usual idea. You are the monster this time. You just keep leveling up, and there's an XP bar where each level gives you 3 evolution cards, and you try to go as far as you can. It's a very simple game, but in a way that makes it really addictive. You could even say it's a more classic roguelike experience. The only roguelike FPS I know, and still very unknown on Android, is Gunfire Reborn. It keeps the same roguelike core but in a first-person format. You enter maps and need to eliminate all enemies, but unlike other games where you mainly upgrade your character, here you focus more on upgrading and swapping your weapons. There are many different weapons, from standard guns to things like bows and arrows, which completely change how you play. It's another game that works both offline and in co-op as well. No, I really like this roguelike because its progression is very minimal, which makes it quite different. Let's talk about Halls of Torment. This game actually has 2 versions, both online and offline. Unlike other roguelikes, this one is a bit more simple. You pick your character and try to survive as long as possible to gain XP, return to the menu and unlock other characters. But the upgrades in this game are very small. While in other games you might get lots of new items, here you'll get something like plus 10 attack or plus 5 defense. This makes the game a lot more challenging, and that's definitely one of its biggest features. Honestly, one of the most beautiful games on this list, especially if you like pixel art, and also pretty unknown, is Lovecraft Untold. The game has you investigating abandoned locations that usually hide monsters inside. A funny thing about it is that it has multiple playable characters, but at the start you only play with the main one, armed with a shotgun. Unlike other roguelikes where you fight hundreds of enemies, this one is more restrained. You might only face around 10 zombies at a time, but the difficulty is still very high. Another thing that makes it tough is that every time you die, you go back to the beginning. In this game, you gather several different characters from the universe to save it from a common enemy. Let's talk about Metaverse Keeper. Even though it has a story, it's actually a more traditional roguelike. The main difference is that it features 4 characters with completely different abilities that change how you play. But the core roguelike system doesn't change much. You still need to keep upgrading as much as possible to defeat the villain at the end. The game is also very nice visually, and I really like that, even if it's still a more standard roguelike. Without a doubt, one of the most addictive games here, if you also like management games, is the roguelike called Moonlighter. The game is split into 2 parts. At night you go into dungeons and it plays like a normal roguelike, where you collect items, upgrade your character and try to go as far as possible. During the day you take all those items and sell them in your shop, which is where the management part comes in. It's one of those games that blends both systems really well, and you can easily spend 100 hours on it. It's just as addictive on the management side as it is on the roguelike side. This game is completely different because it's not just a roguelike, it's also a high-quality tactical RPG. Let's talk about Crawl Tactics. Yeah, unlike many games in this genre, this one doesn't have a story. Instead, it offers incredibly addictive gameplay where your goal is to get as far as possible. You usually start with just 3 characters, but you can recruit more along the way, and of course every character has a completely different playstyle. You move your characters on a grid just like in any tactical RPG. The big difference is that every stage makes you stronger, letting you see just how far you can go. Crawl Tactics was just released and it's still pretty unknown. A roguelike with story mode and clearly inspired by Hades, let's talk about Dandy Ace.
Lele, the green-eyed illusionist, will watch firsthand as my defenses beat you over and over again.
In this game, you play as a beginner magician who gets trapped by another magician, basically your rival. Now, inside a completely different place, you need to use your abilities to find a way out. The game has an ending and a pretty interesting story, but all the combat and progression systems are still based on roguelike mechanics. You can evolve your character and make it feel completely different, but every time you move to another stage, the game resets your progress. And of course, the combat is heavily inspired by Hades, which makes it really fun as well. One of the coolest games on this list is also completely unknown. Let's talk about Elemental World. The name already gives away a lot. It works like a normal roguelike where you need to survive as long as possible and return to the menu to unlock more things. The game has other characters too, but they don't really change the gameplay much. That's because the core of the game revolves around different elements like fire and water. And the best part is that you can combine them. For example, fire and water can create steam. You can even merge up to 3 different elements, which makes the experience very unique and really fun. Imagine a game where every single element is built around the roguelike formula. Yes, that game exists and it's called Encounter the Lost Cards, and this is a true roguelike. Its combat follows the roguelike style and so does its progression. Every enemy you defeat and every part of the story you complete gives you a random upgrade. Even the paths you take throughout the game are completely randomized. If I had to describe it, I'd say it's an RPG with roguelike elements that make the gameplay feel unique and fast-paced. Encounter the Lost Cards is one of the most unique games on this list, and you definitely shouldn't skip it. A game that a lot of people were waiting for on Android finally got released. Let's talk about Enter the Gungeon. Honestly, I think this is also a more standard roguelike. The progression of your character is pretty normal, but one interesting thing is that it has several different characters that completely change how you play. Another thing is that you can actually beat the game by reaching the end of the dungeon. And there's also a second part, Exit the Gungeon, where instead of going deeper, you have to escape the place you entered. Maybe the craziest game on this list, but with really fun gameplay, let's talk about AKXOLOTY. This game uses those little axolotl-like creatures that became popular in Minecraft. I'm not even sure if they exist in real life, but anyway, you're living peacefully with your family until they get kidnapped. So your little fish grabs an AK-47 and goes out to rescue them. Even though the story isn't serious at all, the game still has really solid combat and some cool systems, and even if it looks simple as a roguelike, it ends up being surprisingly addictive. At the same time that this game is a roguelike, it also works as a city builder and management game. Let's talk about Bollocks Paid. The gameplay is completely different and incredibly engaging. You have to defeat as many enemies as possible while constantly upgrading your character. But the goal isn't just fighting, you'll also be building your own town. The more you progress, the more your town starts to take shape. Honestly, I don't know which part is more addictive, the city building or the unique roguelike gameplay. Bollocks Paid is a completely offline game that's kind of hidden on the Playstore, and it's definitely worth checking out. Or that roguelike you can easily play on your phone with one hand while standing, but still super addictive. Let's talk about Card Guardians. Honestly, this is the classic roguelike formula. You have your character and try to see how far you can go. You use 3 combat cards that you can combine, and every time you defeat an enemy, you choose a different path to keep progressing and see how far you can reach. There's nothing really different here, but for some reason, it's an extremely simple roguelike that still ends up being really fun. Maybe one of the simplest games on this list, but also one of the most popular, is 20 Minutes Till Dawn. There's no secret here, you need to survive as long as possible and collect as much XP as you can. The game doesn't have big character upgrades, but it's still very addictive and can easily keep you playing for a long time. What really stands out are the many different characters, each with their own gameplay style. And it's crazy how the simpler a roguelike is, the more addictive it can become, and 20 Minutes Till Dawn is no different. Don't underestimate this game, it's really great. And these were some of the most interesting roguelikes you can find out there, so leave a comment telling me which one you've already played or which one you want to see in a future video, and I'll see you in the next one.